At the other end of the Kohlberg moral scale is the conscious attempt to develop universal ethical principles, which is at the core of what secular humanist groups try to do. We find this in the American Humanist Association's document, Humanism and Its Aspirations, and we also find this in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Humans create their own ethics and then attribute them to a God for enforcement as an invisible policeman. But even if you believe this is useful, it's not evidence that the God behind the God belief actually exists any more than Santa Claus exists. Religion represents our lowest level of moral development, and we're capable of coming up with a much better system of ethics than one based on imaginary beings like Santa Claus and gods. A recent study by the Josephson Institute of Ethics compared students at religious private high schools with students at non-religious private high schools. The students at each school reported the same amount of bullying, violence, and prejudice, and each group also said they were equally likely to have lied on their answers. Thus, religious instruction did not improve the moral character of students, at least in these areas. Well, some people claim that a God is necessary to dispense ultimate justice after we die, so that someone who commits horrible acts and is not punished while they're alive will get punished in an afterlife. Well, this certainly appeals to our sense of justice, but wishing doesn't make it so. That's why atheists are highly motivated to seek justice, including social justice, while we're alive, because it's the only life we have. And working for justice while we're alive is a better attitude to have than hoping for justice after death. So a verifiable system of ethics based on God beliefs or religion is impossible. If ethics based on religious belief had been a success, we wouldn't have needed to look any further. However, religion has been insufficient at best and a failure at worst when it comes to developing a satisfactory ethical system. Furthermore, it doesn't explain the moral behavior we find in other animals. A new paradigm is needed, one that links and explains human and other animal morality, and which is based on the natural world rather than a supposed supernatural world. That paradigm, of course, is evolution. Our first clue that we do not base our ethics upon religion comes from the following example. Imagine a mother with two children, a girl and a boy, and the girl starts hitting the boy. Does the mother say to the girl, "Stop hitting your brother because it says not to in a holy book, in the Quran, the Vedas, the New Testament, whatever"? No, you never hear the mother say that. That's because religion is not primarily the source of our ethics. Well, what do you hear the mother say? You hear her say things like, "Stop hitting your brother, you're hurting him." That's consequences. Or, "Stop hitting your brother, how would you like it if someone hit you?" And that's empathy. And consequences and empathy are the real basis of our ethical system. Our ability to identify and predict consequences comes from simple observation. It is mainly consequences that we use to determine what's right and wrong. Does an action have a beneficial effect with no detrimental effects? Well, then we say it's ethical. Does an action hurt someone else and have no redeeming value, such as a random killing? Well, then we say it's unethical. Does an action hurt someone else but have a redeeming value, such as killing in self-defense? Well, then we say it's ethical. Not all decisions are black and white, and many things require weighing competing values. Why would evolutionary forces, which we usually think of as generating only selfish behavior, generate cooperative behavior and behavior that helps others? Humans and other social animals have a selfish nature, but we also have a cooperative nature. For a social species like humans, cooperation, helping others, can increase our own personal ability to survive, and this would have been rewarded by evolution. If we help others in our tribe, they are more likely to help us in return. This is known as reciprocal altruism. And if more members of our tribe survive, we're better able to hunt for food and to defend ourselves against other animals and other tribes. This helps us as individuals in the tribe. If we help someone else and do not get an immediate reward, we still build social capital. We gain a good reputation, and people are more likely to admire us and help us, knowing there's a good chance that we'll help them back because we've been helpful in the past. How does reciprocal altruism explain the fact that these days we'll often help perfect strangers whom we'll never meet again? Reciprocal altruism was hardwired during our evolution in small tribes where everyone knew everyone else. The tendency to be helpful continues because it's only been a few thousand years since we left tribal living, and that hasn't been long enough to have bred the behavior out of us. Besides, being helpful is a good general rule to follow. The cost is usually low and the rewards can be high. We can see evolution the effect of evolution at work when it comes to organ donation. We're much more likely to donate an organ to a relative than to a friend, and much more likely to donate an organ to a friend than a complete stranger. The fact that some people do donate organs to complete strangers is explained by the fact that they view their tribe as being all of humanity. Now, sometimes religion can help with this view if it teaches that we're all God's children. But God belief isn't necessary because we're definitely all nature's children and we're all the same species. Moreover, the history the religious groups have of fighting each other doesn't make religion look too promising as a force to unite humanity. We get positive feedback when we help others. It makes us feel good. In fact, this is nature's way of rewarding our behavior by releasing endorphins into our system. Helping others tends to help our group, and what helps our group tends to help us. Helping others also takes the focus off of ourselves and any worries that we may have, and it helps in that way too. It also gives us a personal feeling of empowerment to help other people, which is good for our self-esteem. Of course, if we're too helpful, too giving at the expense of our own lives, that could have negative ramifications on our health. The thing that helps us cooperate with one another and to help one another is empathy, if we can feel their pain. So where does empathy come from? Recently, scientists have discovered something called mirror neurons. If you bang your elbow on a wall, your brain will generate a sense of pain. And this is helpful because it tells you not to bang your elbow again and make it worse, and it tells you to maybe put your arm in a sling to help the elbow heal. So it's good that your brain is generating a sense of pain. There's a further reaction to the pain. You may also wince and moan and cry. And if you think about it, this really has nothing to do directly with the healing process. Wincing and moaning and crying do not prevent you from further injuring your elbow, nor do they make your elbow heal any faster. However, things like wincing and moaning and crying communicate to other people that you're in pain, and holding your sore elbow communicates the location of that pain. If I observe you clutching your elbow and crying out in pain, the same neurons that are firing in your brain to cause you pain will also fire in my brain, but to a lesser degree. And it will allow me to feel your pain. And this is what we mean by mirror neurons. The neurons don't fire as strongly in my brain as they do in your brain because that would be debilitating for me. But they fire just enough for me to feel empathy and sympathy for you and come to your aid. And as I've explained, in a social species like humans, helping each other can increase our own survival chances. This mirror neuron effect is so profound that most of us wince in sympathy when we see another person on television get cut with a knife or injected with a needle. Mirror neurons have been directly observed in primates, humans, and other species, including birds. Mirror neurons react to sight, sound, and even smell. It is hypothesized that mirror neurons were first associated with communication and were later used for empathy. There's almost no human trait that is unique to humans. The difference between us and other animals is usually a difference of degree, not a difference of kind. We have found that other animals, especially other mammals, are capable of such things as cooperation, empathy, and a sense of justice. For example, a group of elephants rescued a group of caged antelopes by undoing the cages on the gate, by undoing the latches on the gate. A rat in a cage refused to push a lever for food when it saw that another rat received an electric shock as a result. A female monkey who couldn't figure out how to put a token in a slot to get food was helped out by another monkey who put the token in the slot for her and then allowed her to eat the food that came out instead of eating it himself. A female bat helped another female bat who was trying to give birth by showing her how the proper way to hang. A cat led an elderly, deaf, and blind dog friend away from obstacles and toward food. A group of chimpanzees in a zoo punished a chimp who arrived late for dinner because the rules were that no one eats until everyone is present. These are just a few examples of cooperation, empathy, and a sense of justice that we find in the non-human animal world. But I've saved the best for last. When a petri dish full of bacteria is exposed to antibiotics, a small number of resistant bacteria sacrifice some of their own growth to help out their less resistant fellow bacteria. Does anyone here believe that a God is instructing this bacteria to help out its neighbors? Of course, not only do we share the good impulses of other animals, we also have some of the bad ones, as witnessed by the cruelty, torture, persecutions, killings, and wars that humans have engaged in. But my point is that when we consider ethical behavior, we also find it in other animals, and evolution explains this far better than God does. We have found that the odor in a room can influence how we judge things. A bad odor can make us more critical and judgmental, and a pleasant odor can make us more forgiving. This is understandable if ethical judgments have a purely biological basis. But it makes no sense if ethics are God-given. Why should odor affect them? So how should we act? At the very least, we should act in a way that does not increase suffering. There are also incentives for us to increase the well-being for ourselves and for society. There are going to be differences of opinion, but that doesn't mean we can't cite at least some clear-cut examples. When judging what is ethical or not, part of what we do is look at the consequences or the anticipated consequences and do a cost-benefit analysis. For example, smothering a baby to death is usually considered to be unethical, unless the baby's cries will expose a group of Jews who are hiding from the Nazis, and those cries will alert the Nazis, and the Nazis will kill them all. Because we share a common ancestor with all life on Earth, it's not surprising that we have mirror neuron reactions towards other species and have compassion toward them as well. Very few people would be cruel to animals, and even if we kill and eat them, we still want them to live and die as painlessly as possible. It's not always easy to decide which of the two options brings us the greater good. Unfortunately, this process can get hijacked by God belief, where anything can be justified in the name of a God because God's will is seen as the greatest possible good. When we worry about pleasing a God more than we worry about the welfare of humanity, then we're in trouble. Of course, pleasing a God really means adhering to the views of people who claim to speak for a God. Some people worry about legalizing gay marriage because they worry about displeasing an invisible God. Meanwhile, this attitude, which is the attitude of the fertility cult, causes harm to society. There are no bad secular consequences for legalizing gay marriage, and in